Speed. Quite possibly the most sought after thing in Duet Night Abyss. Faster clears, faster loot, and faster waifus. After all, when the only thing limiting your power gain is your own time, the fastest is therefore the strongest. So, since speed is one of the most important things in Duet Night Abyss, notably so that you can complete stuff even faster and moving around the map, I mean, we've already had a few missions already where we are spending a large amount of time getting from point A to point B. So obviously, getting there even faster, especially fully understanding all of the movement abilities that we have available, will give you a large advantage in this game. So, starting out with the basics, we have the obvious, we have the dashes and we have the sprints. So, if you press your shift key, or whatever button it is for controller and mobile, you will do a dash, and if you hold it, you'll be in sprint. And if you release, you will remain in sprint until you stop moving, in which you will be moving normally. Now, something to note about the dashes is that you can actually use them as many times as you want in mid-air, so long as you have enough charges. This is not like another open world style game, Wuthering Waves, where you've got your one and then it's done. So that is something to note. We also have the grapple, but that's something that's only sparsely used, and I don't think it's actually used in any of the missions we have right now. But right here we can see the button prompt on screen. If you press it, it'll take you straight to the grapple point, and if there are any other grapple points, you can grapple to them immediately after. This is decent enough movement, but obviously it's very limited in its application, especially because you can only grapple when you have a grapple point visible. Starting out, we have the double jump. It's very simple. If you're in mid-air, you press spacebar again, you can double jump. It gives you a little bit of extra height and also preserves your height a bit further in the air, so you'll probably figure out the best ways to use it. Moving on from that, we have this game's other movement, which is the slide, and if you slide and then press jump, you will do what's called a helix leap, which will propel you forward in momentum depending on where you're looking in the camera. Also, if you're on the ground and you do a helix leap input, it will send you straight up into the air, giving you the max vertical distance that you can perform with a helix leap itself. Additionally, you can also perform the helix leap in mid-air, so long as you haven't done a double jump prior to that. So if you do a double jump, you can't do a helix leap in mid-air, but you can helix leap from the ground into a double jump in mid-air. So with this right here, you can probably see where the movement is starting to come from. Just going from sprinting to helix leaping will do you wonders in terms of your total distance traveled, as well as how easily you can get into it, because a helix leap, unlike sprinting, can take you very far. Now, there is one other thing, and it's the wall jumps, which I'm doing right now, and I'm just gonna be honest, they're not very good. The mantles are really weird, and it'll kind of just like stop working for a bit, so you can't really climb with it. You can really only sometimes rely on it being a mantle. The mantle, if you're hitting the ledge, does work pretty well, but you can't really get up a mountain like that. It doesn't work very well. So it's definitely a lot better to helix leap, double jump, and use your other momentum to get your vertical distance, or to climb up using the other parts of the environment rather than trying to scale a wall. And the final thing with our base movement is the glide. So if you're in mid-air and you start firing your weapon or reloading your weapon, you will glide forward, moving in whatever direction you have an input key held in. And the best way to preserve this as much as possible is to shoot and then reload. Obviously, it varies on the weapon, but this will be the most ammo preservation for the most distance traveled. And one important thing to note about the glide is that it preserves any momentum that you were carrying before. So as you can see right now, I'm not really moving that fast because I just went into a glide with the strafe, but if I helix leap into a glide, you can see I'm moving significantly faster. But that's only if I'm moving in the same direction that I helix leap. If I turn around like I just did, I'll lose all that momentum and essentially just go into a full crawl in mid-air. So that is something that bears mentioning and will be important for certain techs later. So all of this that I just told you right here is the base movement of the game. It already is pretty good, but there are certain things that you can do to make it much better. Now, the first thing, and one of the obvious things, is using a Geniemon. And there is a particular Geniemon in the game called the Miraculous Para-Rabbit. It'll give you a strong buff for all of your movement abilities, increasing your jump speed, helix leap speed, and decreasing your slide friction. So just equipping this will increase your movement all around, and this is just the base level of the passive. It will double if you max out the Para-Rabbit as well. Also, if you do not have this Geniemon, or do have it and would like to upgrade further, there are also traits that you can make use of from the inactive Geniemon. And I can show right here with the Bro Boxy the full list of them. This is every single trait in the game, and we have dodge cooldown reduction, we have slide speed increase, we have helix leap speed, and we have jump speed. So all of those same buffs that the Para-Rabbit gave can also be applied as traits as well, and you can also, of course, reduce your dodge cooldown. So if you want to move even faster, then you can, of course, apply all those traits to your active Geniemon. But right here, by just equipping the Para-Rabbit alone at its base level, you can already see that I'm moving significantly faster with my helix leaps compared to before. And this is without any traits, without any ascensions, so you could just imagine how much faster this will be going. However, that's not the only thing that you have available to you. You'll probably be a little bit upset that if the only thing that you can do to increase your movement is having a gold Geniemon or using your traits, because I'm sure a lot of you are loving your Miraculous Bro Boxy with its passive skill for the loot buffs, as well as the XP increases, as well as traits like Frugal and Death for your mission completions. If you had a shiny Bro Boxy, you'd be able to put 2 movement skills in here, but obviously you're still missing out on the big buffs for the Para-Rabbit. Now, there are other things that you can do with your builds that will actually massively increase your mobility. And there are 3 different weapons that you have access to that will be the best at doing this. And those weapons are going to be the dual blades, the scythes, and the pole arm weapons. At base, you'll probably be thinking, okay, well, these weapons are pretty nice, but what actually makes them so good for movement, I don't understand. And that's because you are likely missing a particular demon witch from it. For the dual blades is going to be the Fenrir's in full bloom. For the scythe, it's going to be the piercing ascent, and for the polearm, it's also going to be piercing ascent. So if you want to get these demon wedges, the Fenrir's in full bloom is going to be obtained from the fishing shop, and the piercing ascent for the polearms and scythes is going to be obtained from the immersive theater exchange. Now, I already talked about what makes these so good for movement, and I believe you all deserve a demonstration. I already showed off like the normal like helix leap stuff. With this weapon right here, you can see that I'm moving very fast across the ground using these dual blades, and you can just spam this out. And a nice thing about it is that it'll actually keep you low to the ground, so you won't actually be losing your ability to use it very often, because I mean, obviously you can't slide attack in the air, you'd have to plunge, which is pretty fast. So lateral movement, obviously this is very strong. Of course, this is a very strong weapon. I do know that most people who are using Lin specifically want to be using a weapon, or specifically a melee weapon, that has much better passive, such as this scythe right here. This is probably the most used one on Lin. I can equip it on her and show it to you with just piercing ascent active, and this is going to be an extremely strong thing right here, where it'll just shoot you forward. But if you have only the piercing ascent equipped, you'd probably be saying like, okay, well, this looks pretty good, but it's not that fast. And this is where another little bit of this build gets added into it. Both the slide attack from the dual blades and the charge attack from piercing ascent get affected by weapon attack speed increases. So if I equip this charge attack speed increase and then show you the scythe itself, you can see that I'm going much faster. And you can also just use this in air And much like a Helix Leap, it will give you momentum in an upward or downward direction, depending on where you're looking. So if you look slightly upward, it will dash you primarily forward, but it can also dash you slightly up or slightly down. And you can see that I can get across the map very fast using this. This gets even better because other attack speed increases will actually affect this even further. So if I equip Outsider, who has some attack speed increases in his kit, and also equipped this weapon right here, which gives even more attack speed increase upon casting the ultimate, which is where Outsider gets his attack speed increases from. If I just show like the base, which would be about there, and this is basically me using it off cooldown, and then go and cast this ult, get that active, and you can see I'm just absolutely flying through the air. And this isn't even with it maxed out either, because I still have extra smelts I can do for this, and I still have skill upgrades for his buff as well. There is an additional Demon Wedge that you can get access to in the future. It is going to be a gold melee weapon one, and you'll be able to obtain these at level 55. But right here, you can get a 42% attack speed increase, which is almost as much as the passive plus Outsider ult that I showed you before, and it's just active all the time and would also stack with those buffs as well. So just equipping this on that scythe would give you essentially the same movement speed right here for everybody who has it equipped. So what that means is that essentially if you have a character whose best weapon is a ranged weapon, or they use primarily abilities, you can use melee weapons such as the dual blades and the scythe as utility mobility weapons to greatly increase your maneuvering speed throughout missions, as well as the overworld. Now, when it comes to the immersive theater, this isn't going to matter much. However, when it comes to grinding, especially particular missions like excavation, mediation, capture, and likely some others as well, those are just the ones that I know off the top of my head, having very fast movement to get from point A to point B is going to massively increase your speed in completing these missions, and I can demonstrate this right here. So I've got Lynn equipped, and she's got her scythe, which is likely her best in slot melee weapon currently. But you can see I can just immediately get into it, and you do want to be a bit careful on the ledges because you can get stuck if you're not careful. But you can see I'm just flying through this mission, and once I capture him, and he needs me to save him. But as soon as we get back to going to the evacuation point, you can see I'm just continuously flying through the air. I do not have to care about the environment. I do not have to care about anything else. I am a jet engine. And it gets even faster than this. Again, this is without the gold wedge. This is without any of the other attack speed increases. And I just flew through that entire mission right there. And unlike the dual swords, you can just completely fly over gaps, just speed through anything and everything. So this is probably going to be the best movement we have available right now. Of course, a lot of characters aren't going to be able to use their most optimal damage builds with this. You wouldn't really want to be using the optimal damage build over this in a lot of the scenarios that you want the speed, because in the scenarios which you want those optimal damage builds, being the end game like immersive theater, you are in essentially just combat arenas teleported there, and there aren't really any movement objectives whatsoever, so that wouldn't benefit you at all regardless. But for the characters who do not use their melee weapon as their primary source of damage, you can make use of that as a very, very potent utility movement option. But without that, you still obviously have all of the other things that I told you about before. Now, when I mentioned before that the glide carries your momentum, that also applies to momentum gained through character abilities. So if you have a character ability that shoots you forward, like Rhythm, you can go kinda nutty fast in a particular direction. And with that rhythm clip shown, and you can see the absolute craziness that she's able to do, that really covers everything that I know about movement currently in Duet Night Abyss, as well as the best options that you'll have going forward. If you're enjoying my coverage of Duet Night Abyss and would like to see more videos in the future, be sure to subscribe to my channel to never miss a video on this game. I don't know if you do. If any of these movement tips helped you out at all, especially when it comes to the side flying, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be loving this. Be sure to let me know which one helped you the most in the comments down below. With that all out of the way, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.